Kennedy.
Professor, congratulations. I believe you testified that you think the Constitution should be interpreted according to its original public meaning. Is that right?
Yes, Senator.
What does original public meaning mean?
Yes, Senator. So the original part of that phrase refers to the fact that when we look at interpreting a text, we want to interpret it. At the time it was,
Professor, look me in the eye and just answer my question. What does original public meaning mean?
it means the meaning that the text of the text as it was understood by the public at the time it became law.
Okay. So you think Brown v. Board of Education was incorrectly decided?
Well, Senator, I think Brown versus Board of Education was correctly decided. Scholars who have looked at the original meaning of phrases at that time and the reasoning in that case sometimes question the reasoning of the case.
How many people in the United States of America at the time the Constitution was drafted do you think supported racial integration of schools? You think that was a majority view, do you?
Well, Senator,
At
the time-
But first, Professor, do you think that was a majority view? Do you think most Americans at the time the Constitution was drafted supported integration of public schools, racial integration?
well, Senator, I don't know as a sociological matter what percentage of people thought what at that time. I should point out that when we got to Brown versus Board of Education, of course, there had been several
But isn't
fundamental
that
amendments to the.
inconsistent with your statement that you have to interpret it according to original public meaning?
Well, what about the 14th Amendment and the 13th Amendment and the 15th Amendment? So original public meaning would mean
what
with
about?
those. Well, that would mean we would interpret those amendments and those protections with the understanding of the text and structure at the time those amendments were ratified, which is different, of course, in the 19th century.
Let's go back to Brown v. Board. Look, I think Brown v. Board was correctly decided, and I suspect you do too. But if you say we interpret the Constitution according to the way that people at that time understood it, do you really think that people at that time in America supported racially integrated schools? Do you really believe that?
Well, Senator, I think at the time of the ratification of the 13th, 14th Amendment, and 15th, all which
But
have.
do you think people at that time supported integrated schools?
Well, Senator, on that particular question, I don't know it as a policy matter whether they were thinking about that particular issue. I think they certainly understood that the 14th Amendment, for which a massive part of this country essentially lost lives fighting the Civil War, certainly understood it to require
But,
racial
Professor,
equality.
You're not answering my question. I'm trying to understand I'm just trying to understand how you think. It's very easy to say, we interpret the Constitution according to its original public meaning, which as I appreciate your testimony, means the way people who read the Constitution at that time interpreted it. Is that right?
Yes, Senator.
Okay.
What happens when a clean academic theory meets hard historical reality? In this Senate hearing, a law professor walks in confident about original public meaning and walks straight into a relentless line of questioning. From Brown versus Board of Education to legislative history, this exchange turns constitutional interpretation into a courtroom-style showdown.
Do you think that most people at that time looked at the United States Constitution and said, well, here it is, big as Dallas, racially integrated schools are required? Do you really believe that?
Senator, I don't know, but
And if you don't, I don't think you do, because I think historically that wasn't the case. So how do you square that with the holding of Brown v. Board?
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is I think there are several steps in between that have not come up yet in our conversation, which is that you look at the text and structure, which of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments clearly is requiring racial equality. And then over time, that has to be applied to different questions as they arise in context. So if the requirement is that all races be treated equally under the law, and the evidence shows that segregated schools is not doing that, then the requirement could be applied to integrate schools.
When you interpret a statute, you talked about interpreting it according to its plain meaning. What if the statute is ambiguous?
Well, Senator, if the statute
What do you
were-
do if it's ambiguous?
if it's ambiguous on the particular question coming before the court, I start with that phrase, but I also look at the context of surrounding provisions.
No, how I understand you define ambiguity as the language plus the surrounding language.
Yes.
I get that part. How ambiguous does it have to be? 51% ambiguous or just a little bit ambiguous?
So I have to say, I would use the same approach essentially in all cases, regardless of the ambiguity, because I would always start with the text, move to the surrounding provisions with the aim of fully understanding what Congress and the President had enacted. And only at that
Professor,
point.
I'm going to run out of time. With respect, answer my question.
Well,
Okay, you're giving me professor talk. How ambiguous does it have to be?
I mean, I think under the Supreme Court's recent precedent in Chevron, it underscored that the court can never just rest and say it's ambiguous. The court has to come up with an answer.
Yeah.
So
So
I
why
would,
don't you just look at legislative history?
well, you can't look at legislative history of statements one by one because
Why
the
not?
individual
Why not?
intent. Well, Senator, with respect, because this body has its role in our system as an institution, not one by one. So your personal understanding of the
You don't-
law doesn't
This will
matter.
be my last question, I'm sorry. Well, Coons went way over. So you're telling me that it doesn't help you at all to go through and look at the congressional record or read the committee reports or any of that? You don't think that's helpful in interpreting what a statute means?
It depends on the way in which it's being read. If it gives helpful statutory history, if it helps to refer to other portions of context, sure, but not to give it legally binding impact in and of itself. I would always be looking at a broad range of sources and use each of these statements as just one piece of evidence about what people understood the statute to mean at the time. So no, I would never take a piece of legislative history in isolation and give it legal impact.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, comment, and hit the subscribe button for more political insight.